I've now been playing Dragon Age The Veilguard for quite some time, and even though I haven't finished the game, I can already tell you how I feel about the game, the gameplay itself, and the things I like and I don't like too much. Now, before we jump into the whole game itself, one thing I want to mention, I will not say anything about the story. This will be a completely spoiler-free review, and I will not mention the story at all. Now, there are a few aspects like writing and some of the moments I want to point out, but again, this will not lead to any conclusions you can draw how the story could go. Now, with that said, let's talk a little bit about the tech, because this is the newest iteration of the Frostbite engine, as far as I'm aware, and it runs fantastically. I can run the game on ultra settings, 60 FPS, 4040p, and even selective ray tracing enabled. And if you don't know what that is, that's actually a pretty cool idea. So you have ray tracing on, and then you have selective ray tracing, and the game has certain areas where the developers thought that ray tracing would actually enhance the scenery and it also wouldn't interfere with your gameplay flow. And again, it has been fantastic so far because it worked out, and I would definitely love to see more games doing that. And if you're now asking, so what's your system, Mo? I'm running a Ryzen 5800 X3D, 32 gigabyte of RAM. The game is installed on my NVMe 2, and I'm running a GeForce 3080 with 12 gigabyte of RAM. So definitely a little bit more high end, but certainly not the best you can get with money. And again, I never had any problems, especially when I installed the newest drivers. I actually got a few percentage out of that, which was also nice to see. So yeah, on the technical level, I really enjoy what the game has to offer. The same goes with all the audio settings and other gameplay settings. You can mix and match. There are also some accessibility settings like colorblind mode, which is really helpful for me, even though I don't need it. So I have a color blindness, and I didn't need it, which is already pretty good, but they are in the game. I'm also using, which you'll probably see here in the background in the video, the circle in the middle, which is helping for some people which are suffering from motion sickness. I don't have that problem, but hey, I have viewers so who have that problem, and it also helps me to know where basically the middle of the screen is all the time because I'm a dingus. So that's nice to have. But yeah, from a technical aspect, this game has been pretty good and definitely on the top high end about what games are normally offering. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. This is not Dragon Age Origins. I know this shouldn't shock anyone who has watched just 5 minutes of trailers or anything related to the game, but I just want to make this so clear. This is not Dragon Age Origins. And believe me, I hate that. I love Dragon Age Origins. I want them to go back to that. And if anything else, Baldur's Gate 3 should have proven them that you can make an amazing CRPG which is critically acclaimed and is selling so many numbers. You don't have to just be an action RPG all the time to draw in the masses, right? Because that's the feeling I'm getting a little bit when I'm looking at this game. It's this, you made it an action game because you just hope to appeal to more players. And the more I've been playing this game, I was always thinking, man, what does this remind me of? I cannot put my finger on it, but it reminds me of something. And the answer is God of War. It reminds me of the recent God of War games, and I don't mean that in a negative way, by the way. It was just something I wanted to associate the game with, and now I found it. Like the animations, the combat, the slight RPG mechanics, even though the RPG tree, the skill tree with the specializations is pretty cool, and there's actually quite a bit of options there. But there are already some overpowered builds I figured out for myself without even having to go to the internet. And like it definitely allows you to test out a few things for yourself. So they did a good job on those RPG stuff, but the itemization is pretty one-sided. I mean, you have your weapons for your class, then you have the chest, the helmet, two rings, and two amulets, or well, an amulet and like a pouch area you can also improve. And that's that, right? Like, there is definitely some RPG elements there, but it is relatively surface level, right? So this is why it reminds me so much of the recent God of War games, because they did something very similar, right? And again, the combat is fun. I'm playing with mouse and keyboard, and I just enjoy the fluidity of the combat and what also your companions are doing, how they are jumping in. There's this one moment where I'm like, Atreus, is that you? Like, one of the characters is an archer, and she does the jump into the air, shoot a fan of arrows, and then jump backwards. Basically, you have probably seen in so many games, but especially God of War has that moment with Atreus doing exactly that etched into my brain. So yeah, this is where I'm going always with my thought process. But again, it's not Origins. If you're expecting a deep CRPG experience, I'm sorry, you are not getting that, right? And that's fine if you know what you are getting yourself into. And I have to say, of the last two recent Dragon Age games, Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition, this game is a huge improvement. This game feels finally like somebody had a direction, somebody had a vision, and they were following that down to the T. Especially Inquisition had this problem for me, where I always felt that the developers didn't really know, do they want to be more like Origins, or do they want to be more like Dragon Age 2? And they could never make up their mind. And Inquisition for me always felt trapped in this gameplay loop. They couldn't really quite made up their mind on what they wanted. This game knows what it wants, and it delivers on that. The riddles in the game are okay. The only thing which annoys me a little bit is the little energy batteries you have to move around on between the levels, and then to open up some gates. It's like, oh, come on. If they even have those batteries you have to move around, like elven batteries, I just call them that. And you even sometimes have to move them around when it makes no sense, right? You just, like, there was a moment where you had to do a pretty big, elaborate riddle to open up a door. And then after that was a second door where the game was just like, oh, well, take the elven battery with you. You have been using the whole time to open this door now as well. It's like, oh, come on, there was no need to put a freaking door here, right? There were definitely some of those moments, but I would say there are quite a bit of interesting riddles, secrets, and other things you have to figure out slowly by playing the game, which is just fun. I really enjoy that. Speaking about enjoyment, we definitely also know that this game started out as a live service game and thankfully isn't anymore. And you see a few remnants here and there, but they are not influencing any of your gameplay. But especially when you are going into the hub area and you have like the upgrade area, the blacksmith area, like you have all those little areas where you can slowly upgrade the stuff you have, like +1, +2, +3, upgrading the rarity. You need resources for that. And you cannot stop thinking, oh, yeah, yeah, this would have been the live service part, wouldn't it be? But they dumped it down to the point that it doesn't really concern you too much. It isn't really pain in the ass. You don't have to do dailies or anything. You don't even have to farm. You just have to play the game and you get so much stuff that you don't notice it, right? But you can clearly see where this game was at some point when it comes to this live service bullshit. And I'm so glad they cut it out from the game. Now, let's talk about a few other things which are not as great in the game, and that's facial animation, voice acting, and writing. I have to make this very clear. Those things are good. They're okay. They are solid foundation, but they are not on the Baldur's Gate 3 level. And on the one hand, I'm like, really? You're telling me that Baldur's Gate 3, basically an indie studio, can do this, but a AAA game cannot keep up with that? Hmm, questionable, but all right. But also setting yourself up with the expectation that every game has the quality level like Baldur's Gate, man, you will start to hate a lot of games. So yes, the facial animations are sometimes a little bit off. There is this one thing I saw with a buddy of mine where their character was frowning 24/7, and they didn't saw that in the character creation, but they are now seeing it in the cutscene over and over, so that they already had to change their character, right? It just looks weird. The voice acting most of the time is on spot, but there are some moments where you clearly realize that you are now making decisions, right? Like they are brought back decisions, and they can be really impactful and really important. But you also realize that they basically cut in what your character or another character would say, depending on the decision you just made, and you feel that cut. You unfortunately do, and that's like, oh come on, man, you could have cut that a little bit better. It doesn't, like, sometimes things feel out of place. Same goes with voice actors. Like there are some which are fantastic, love them, and then there are some others where I'm like, definitely didn't had your best day when you were recording this. But all in all, it was okay. Writing, the writing is decent. Don't expect anything crazy here. What they are doing, and what I definitely reject, is this Deus Ex Machina they're doing quite often. And they are also alluding a lot of information you could just get if your character would just ask simple questions, right? Like you could literally just go to an important character and be like, okay, tell me why you were doing this. But nobody does that. Nobody asks that question. And it is clear that the game is trying to build up to the moment where you will finally find out the master plans running in the background. And it's like, oh, come on, man. This is pretty obvious that we are getting to that. And again, you could just evade this whole thing by just asking simple questions. It's not that hard. And yeah, like there are definitely some writing moments where I'm like, eh, eh, it's alright. It's not as blatant as the Diablo 4 expansion recently, which literally resorted to, oh my god, the world is ending. What can we do? Friendship. What? Okay. Like, they're not that bad. Okay. But yeah, they have their moments. So, in general, like, Dragon Age The Veilguard, from a purely gameplay and game perspective, is a decent to good game. I'm not giving numbers to video games because they are so arbitrary, and everyone has a different opinion what the number should be a game is getting, right? But when I'm looking at Dragon Age The Veilguard, for me, it's a solid 7 or 8. It doesn't excel at anything, it doesn't do anything special. It has decent quality, and everything just clicks and falls into place without doing anything special, right? And that, for me, that's an 8 if I would have to put it on a scale. I know for some people there are some other glaring issues and whatnot, but for me it's like the most safest game you could make. And that's the last thing I would say. Personally, I find that a little bit disappointing, but maybe this was safe enough that it got greenlit. that it hopefully will find its audience and will sell enough copies that maybe somebody at EA will have the same revelation they had when they decided to remove the live service game, and they will go back to a CRPG. Maybe we are lucky on that. But till then, I'm definitely enjoying my playthrough on the game, and I will continue doing so. One last thing I have to mention, the game was provided to me by EA, so I didn't pay for it, but I would. Yep, I would definitely, because I enjoy it. With that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Please keep it civil in the comments. If you still have some questions or some other things to say, you can do that down there. And if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate if you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, you want to see more RPG videos and RPG games, then you came to the right place, and also some survival games here and there. And you might want to subscribe to the channel. With that said, have a good one. Stay safe. Bye-bye.